The soft hum of the city outside my apartment window mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. I straightened my silk blouse, feeling the smooth fabric slide over my skin, a quiet reminder that I had arrived somewhere far from the girl I used to be. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I picked it up, expecting a routine work message. Instead, it was a text from my father. "Family dinner tonight. Don't be late." I stared at it, the words sharp and familiar, yet laced with an old sting. Family dinner. That ritual that once made me feel invisible. My mind wandered to the countless evenings where everyone else was celebrated, gifted, praised, and I was left with a polite smile and a "we forgot about you, sweetheart," echoing from my father's smirk. I sipped my coffee, the warmth grounding me. I reminded myself, that girl is gone. I've built my life, quietly, powerfully, beyond their expectations. Still, a small twist of anticipation crawled through me. Was I ready to walk into that room and confront the ghosts I had carefully tucked away? The lump in my throat threatened to rise, but I let it settle. Tonight wasn't about hurt. Tonight was about the truth, my truth. I was 18, wearing a pale blue dress that my grandmother had pressed for me, standing nervously in the center of the dining room. The table gleamed with silver, candles flickered, and everyone's eyes were sparkling with excitement. Birthdays, promotions, holidays. My family always had a way of turning these moments into spectacles. Everyone except me. That night, my father's smirk cut across the room like a knife as my stepmother handed out gifts. "For you, honey," she cooed to my stepbrother, then my stepsister, then my half-siblings. One by one, the presents were opened, laughter and thanks filling the air. Then a pause. Their eyes glanced my way. "Oh, we forgot about you, sweetheart," my dad said, the words rolling off his tongue with practiced nonchalance. I forced a tight smile, nodding politely as I watched the ribbons fall and the paper crinkle. My hands shook, my stomach knotted, and for the first time I realized how it felt to be deliberately invisible in your own family. I wanted to disappear. The lump in my throat was heavy, a tangible weight that made every breath feel shallow. Later, I found solace in my grandmother's small, cluttered study. She was sipping tea, looking at me with those wise, patient eyes. "Maddie," she said softly, "sometimes people forget to see your worth. That's their blindness, not yours. Keep your eyes open and your hands ready. You can build the life they can't even imagine." She pressed a small, carved locket into my hand. "Remember this. Your story is yours to write." I clutched it, the cold metal grounding me. In that moment, I made a choice, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I would no longer wait for validation from the people who couldn't see me. I would carve my own path, quietly at first, and then with all the brilliance I was capable of. The night's sting didn't disappear, but it transformed into fuel. Every whispered doubt, every smirk, every forgotten moment became part of the foundation I was determined to build. I left that house with nothing but a suitcase, the locket in my pocket, and a stubborn spark I refused to extinguish. The city was overwhelming at first, skyscrapers stretching like glass fingers, the hum of traffic below, people moving so fast I felt invisible. But I had learned from my grandmother that visibility wasn't given, it was earned. I rented a tiny studio apartment, peeling paint on the walls and a squeaky radiator, and began to work tirelessly. I found a mentor, Claire Donovan, a seasoned woman in marketing who believed more in me than I believed in myself. "Maddie," she said one evening as we pored over campaign strategies, "if you want to be remembered, don't wait for applause. Make them notice your work first." I clutched the locket again, as if drawing courage from it, and nodded. The nights were long. I learned to survive on little sleep and strong coffee, my hands cramped from typing proposals and designs, my eyes tired but burning with determination. Self-doubt whispered constantly, "Who do you think you are? Your family didn't even notice you. Why would anyone else?" But I refused to listen. Each small victory, landing my first client, designing a campaign that doubled a company's revenue, seeing my name on a successful project, became bricks in the foundation of my secret empire. I also learned the art of discretion. My family didn't need to know. Social media was carefully curated, only glimpses of my life, never the full picture. I let them imagine I was struggling or barely making it, while I quietly accumulated achievements, investments, and connections. The world outside that apartment began to recognize me before the people who were supposed to know me best. There were sacrifices. Friends who wanted nights out, vacations I postponed, evenings of laughter replaced with spreadsheets and marketing analytics. But each choice was a step toward freedom, a freedom that no forgotten gift or smirk could ever take away. I began to enjoy the thrill of self-reliance, the quiet pride of knowing that my successes were mine alone. By the time I was 25, the world knew Maddie Harper, entrepreneur and strategist, in ways my family never would. I had offices, clients, accolades, and the satisfaction of a life I built from nothing. And still, when my phone buzzed with an invitation to the next family gathering, I paused, feeling that old familiar pang, not of longing, but of anticipation. Tonight, they would see the Maddie they never expected. Not the girl they overlooked, but the woman who turned absence into power, neglect into achievement, and invisibility into undeniable presence. The dining room smelled of roasted turkey and sweet maple glaze, the familiar scent stirring memories I had long tucked away. I stepped in, heels clicking softly against the polished hardwood, and the room froze. My father's smirk faltered, my stepmother's polite smile stiffened, and my siblings barely recognized me. I had dressed deliberately, a tailored navy suit that hugged my frame with quiet elegance, subtle gold jewelry, and my hair perfectly coiffed. But the real statement wasn't in what I wore. It was in the confidence that radiated from every measured step I took. The table, as usual, was glittering with gifts. I noticed the familiar paper and ribbons, the excited chatter as my siblings tore through their presents. My father's eyes flicked toward me, almost searching for the girl who would shrink under his gaze. I didn't disappoint. I didn't flinch. I took a slow breath, letting the room absorb the silence my presence brought. My hand brushed against the locket in my pocket, the same one my grandmother had pressed into my hand years ago. It was my talisman, a reminder that I had survived the dismissals, the smirks, the forgotten moments. Then I spoke, my voice steady, deliberate. Dad, Mom, everyone. You've been celebrating each other, as usual. But I'm not here for leftovers. I'm here to tell you the truth. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Their expressions shifted from confusion to curiosity. My stepmother's smile tightened. My father's smirk became a flicker of uncertainty. I'm not the struggling girl you've assumed I was, I continued. I own my company, Maddie Harper Strategies. We've doubled last year's revenue, acquired 3 major clients, and my net worth. I let my eyes sweep the room, savoring the subtle shock that passed across every face. Is well beyond what you ever imagined. The table fell silent. My siblings stared, mouths slightly open, faces pale. My father's gaze wavered. For once, he couldn't hide the disbelief. My stepmother's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. I gestured to my laptop bag at the side. Inside were contracts, portfolios, press clippings, every piece of evidence anyone could want. Everything I've done, I said, I've done on my own. And yes, I've kept it quiet. I didn't need your approval, or your pity, or your gifts. I've built my life, and I've done it well. A quiet murmur ran through the room. My siblings whispered among themselves, shame creeping into their voices. My father finally spoke, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a rigid stillness. Maddie. I didn't. You forgot, I interrupted gently, holding up the locket. You forgot me that night and many others. But I didn't forget myself. And neither should you. The room was heavy with realization. They had expected a timid, overlooked girl. Instead, they were faced with a woman who had turned neglect into a platform for unimaginable growth. I watched their faces, registering disbelief, shame, and all in one breath. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My presence, my success, my voice, all said enough. For the first time, They weren't looking at a child or a disappointment. They were seeing the woman I had fought to become. The room was quiet, heavy with the weight of their astonishment. I had expected shock, maybe some guilt, but what I felt now was a rush of clarity, a rare opportunity to reclaim not just my dignity, but the balance that had been missing in my family for years. I leaned against the edge of the table, letting the silence do its work. I could walk away. I began, my voice calm but firm. I could leave tonight and never look back. But I don't want to. I believe in growth. I believe in change. And I believe in you, even if you forgot to believe in me. My father's jaw tightened. My stepmother's lips pressed into a thin line. My siblings shuffled in their seats, uneasy, unaccustomed to this tone of authority from me. I knew I had their attention. These are my conditions, I continued, unfolding the list in my mind as carefully as I had built my career. First, honesty. No more hiding behind excuses or false pride. You will speak your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Second, respect. Not just for me, but for yourselves. Your actions must reflect the value you place on your own lives and choices. I paused to let it sink in, then moved on. Third, ambition. I want to see you pursue your dreams, no matter how small they seem to you. Stop waiting for permission. Stop letting fear dictate your steps. Fourth, accountability. Every toxic habit, every pattern that has caused harm, recognize it, address it, and change it. I won't carry the weight of your mistakes anymore. My father opened his mouth, but I raised a hand gently, stopping him. This isn't punishment. This is opportunity. You all get a chance to be better versions of yourselves, not because I demand it, but because I know you're capable. There were nods, hesitant but present. My stepmother's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. My siblings glanced at each other, silently acknowledging that this was different. This wasn't a lecture. This was a doorway. And, I added softer now, if you honor these conditions, you'll have me by your side. I'll mentor, guide, and support you, but only on your terms, and only if you commit. No more forgotten birthdays, no more smirks, no more underestimating anyone in this room. The room held its breath, absorbing every word. The power dynamic had shifted, irrevocably. For years, they had controlled the narrative of my worth. Tonight, I reclaimed it. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with measured authority, compassion, and unwavering clarity. I felt a calm satisfaction settle over me. This wasn't about punishment or pride. This was about transformation. Mine, theirs, and the family we could rebuild together. For the first time in a long time, I realized that being forgotten had been a catalyst, not a curse. And now I controlled the terms. Weeks passed, and the changes were subtle at first. My siblings began to take small steps, enrolling in courses they had postponed, tackling projects they had feared, and speaking with honesty I hadn't heard from them before. My stepmother started volunteering, rediscovering a side of herself that had been buried under obligation and habit. Even my father, quiet and reflective, began to ask questions about my work, genuinely curious instead of judgmental. I watched it all with a quiet smile, sipping coffee in my office one morning, the sunlight catching the edges of my locket. It had been my anchor, my reminder that even in invisibility, I held my own value. The girl who once shrank under a smirk had grown into a woman who commanded respect, not with anger, but with grace and unshakable confidence. Family dinners changed, too. They weren't perfect. Old habits lingered, and awkward silences still appeared. But now, when gifts were exchanged, nobody forgot. And more importantly, I no longer measured my worth by who remembered me or who didn't. I reflected on the journey, the nights of exhaustion, the doubts, the sting of being overlooked. Each moment, painful as it had been, had forged the woman I became. I realized that true power doesn't come from wealth or recognition alone. It comes from owning your story, shaping your destiny, and choosing what and who to let into your life. One evening, I held the locket again, feeling its weight, smooth and cold, but comforting. My grandmother's words echoed, "Your story is yours to write." I had written it, line by line, with courage, persistence, and unwavering self-respect. I smiled, leaning back in my chair, a soft laugh escaping me. The world had tried to define me by what I lacked, by what I was forgotten. But I had redefined it, and in doing so, I had redefined myself. And as I looked out over the city, lights twinkling like promises kept, I whispered, almost to myself, I was never forgotten. I was just waiting for the right time to show them who I really am. That was my final word on the matter, a declaration of strength, independence, and grace. Not a threat, not a boast, just the quiet, undeniable truth of the woman I had become.